Originally I worked from home using a computer, and one day, seeing me, he expressed a desire to try it too, so I let him start with simple games. As he deepened his knowledge and got his own computer, he became even more engrossed. One of his apps became a hit, allowing us to lead a comfortable and happy life. Of course, not all the app's earnings were spent on buying the house. Most of it was saved. We planned to use it for David's education and living expenses so he can focus on what he loves. Well, if he's such an amazing kid, you should have said so earlier. Suddenly my mother's attitude changed drastically and she began to speak in a sweet voice. She put on a forced smile, with her lips trembling slightly, while my father made exaggerated hand gestures. A failure like you can't possibly nurture David's talent. We'll take him in. Had they forgotten what they said at Erica's funeral? Seeing their sickening behavior was unbearable. What are you talking about? You were saying horrible things before. My parents closed in on me step by step as I retreated. With no passers-by around, there was no one to call for help. Just as I was casting my gaze around, wondering what to do, "What are you doing?" Nick's cold voice resonated. Before I knew it, he was standing beside me, protectively putting an arm around my shoulder. "Shut up. Let us see David." "That won't be possible. Please go home." His resolute demeanor momentarily intimidated my parents, but they quickly regained their composure, glaring sharply and demanding to be led into the house. "Stop. If you plan to stay here any longer, I'm calling the police." With that, my parents reluctantly left. However, I couldn't shake the feeling that they wouldn't give up so easily. My predictions soon proved accurate, as they reappeared several days later. They were dressed in the same suspicious parkas, making me rub my eyes in déjà vu. This time, however, there was a particular reason why we had planned to meet them, so their arrival was actually convenient. "Let us in. We want to see David," they demanded over the intercom, seemingly taken aback when I promptly let them in. Looking somewhat bewildered, they walked into our home as if it were their own, inspecting everything from the television in the living room to the vase, Nick's collection of mangas, and the shelf filled with Davis programming books. They touched everything without permission, displaying an irritating sense of entitlement. "I have left some coffee for you. Please take a seat." It was only after I invited them to sit that they finally stopped their invasive inspection and settled down at the dining table. My parents sat side by side with me, David, and Nick opposite them. I was anxious they might try to pull David away if he sat at the end. "You know why we're here today, right? It's about David." Of course we knew that's what they were here for. Nick and I stiffened our expressions. "Since we accepted you to take in David despite your infertility, you should at least pay us a reward." If we hadn't said anything, someone with a terrible personality like yours wouldn't have thought to take him in, right? I wanted to retort that the one with a terrible personality was them. After all, weren't they the ones who had no intention of taking David in? I still remember the harsh words they had spewed at the funeral. They had clearly stated they had no intention of caring for David. Nick, with his good memory, must remember it just as I do. "Come on, David. Why don't you live with us? We raised your mother, Erica, with so much love." My mother began to fervently describe how much love they had poured into Erica since she was a child. How they never got angry at her, bought her books, toys, clothes, and accessories, anything she wanted. How they celebrated her birthdays with grand parties at home. I remembered what my mother recounted, but also remembered how she would unfairly lash out on me, as if I were to blame for something I hadn't done, and how I never received proper gifts from them. Erica seemed troubled by their favoritism too. When I was unjustly scolded in her place, she would cry and apologize, saying, "I'm sorry, sis, it's my fault." And on occasions like my birthday, she would secretly celebrate with me, gifting me cute hair accessories or cosmetics she bought with her allowance. Erica realized something was wrong with our parents' behavior and grew up normally and kind without being influenced by their mindset. Apparently, my parents mistook this as a result of their good parenting. "See, just like I raised Erica to be such a gentle child, I'll raise you the same way." My parents poured their hopeful gaze into David. However, he made a puzzled face and said to me and Nick, "Who are these people?" It's been 10 years since he last saw them, and perhaps due to their lack of money, their appearances have drastically aged and became unkempt, making it understandable that he didn't recognize them. Shocked by being forgotten, my parents were speechless, their mouths opening and closing without words. Frozen, leaning forward at the table, Nick handed them something. My father noticed it first, slowly turned his gaze and opened the envelope to pull out its contents. "What? How did you get this?" My mother, prompted by my father's surprised voice, looked over, and they both saw documents proving their gambling debts. Nick had suspected their identities as the suspicious individuals from the beginning and had hired a detective agency to investigate. "We cannot hand over David to you. Not just because of your financial instability due to debts, but also because you're not trustworthy as individuals." Nick's tone was stern, a rarity when he speaks to his elders, conveying his anger. "Besides, we've already cut ties, right? So we owe you nothing." Nick nodded firmly in agreement. "Stay away from our precious son, David." Intimidated by his assertiveness, my parents collapsed from their chairs with a clatter. They didn't seem to hurt themselves badly, but struggled to stand up due to their weakness. Damn it, why are you all so ungrateful? With those parting words, they finally left. Nick and I watched them leave and then hugged David tightly, relieved. Later, we heard the parents had to sell their house to pay off their debts. Please, let us stay for a while. We have nowhere to go. They had asked relatives and acquaintances, but no one would take them in. Their behavior at the funeral had spread, and no one wanted to invite such unreasonable people into their homes for fear of what they might do. That's what they deserved. They came to us, but we firmly refused. We'd prefer it if you didn't involve us any further. As I've said before, we've cut ties with you. It was your decision to accept this, so we're under no obligation to provide you with money or a place to live. With that, they left with a look of despair and have not returned since. We told them we'd call the cops if they came back, and that seemed to scare them off. Without a place to stay, they began living almost like homeless people, unable to secure a job due to their age and surviving day to day on short-term jobs. There was this middle-aged couple scanning job listings at the grocery store, but I jetted before I could figure out if they were my parents. They couldn't afford their phone bills anymore and had to cancel their smartphones. I've changed my number just in case, ensuring they can't contact us anymore. We no longer have to fear the doorbell or phone ringing. The three of us now live in peace. I continue my work from home and David is next to me, working on his computer, developing new apps. He always happily shares his progress with me and Nick. I wonder if he'll tell us about his next app completion. I look forward to it and can't wait to see what he creates next. Together with Nick, I'm committed to nurturing Dave's talents further.